everyone, and welcome to another edition of CTS BizTalk. Today is exciting. We have our new super cool CTS background, so very exciting.
Check them out.
Yeah, we're looking good, looking spiffy. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. I want to introduce Simon. Simon has been with CTS for a little over 6 years. His role is IT Service Delivery Manager. So Simon, say hello, talk about CTS, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into our fun topic.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me again. Hopefully some of you guys watched one of my previous videos where we talked about client onboarding, but like Frank mentioned, I've been with the company for a little over 6 years, started as a technician, matured a little bit, advanced into this role as a service delivery manager for CTS, and now are having some more fun conversations with our clients, strategic planning, budgeting, and that will kind of segue into our conversation today.
Yeah. So today's conversation, the title, the topic is the right balance of IT budgets for businesses. This is something that a lot of our clients come to us all the time. Like, hey, what should we help us build our budget for the upcoming year, which we do. And we will create, part of that is our IT roadmap, maybe some solutions and services that they're not currently utilizing with us, and becoming a more mature technology organization and utilizing tech and cybersecurity to protect their organization, their business, and then assets, as well as make themselves more profitable and efficient. So I brought Simon on board. He has these conversations a lot more than I do these days with clients and how much they should be basically carving out on what they should be spending. So excited about this. Good topic to have.
Yep.
So Simon, I'm going to just open forum. I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff out at you. But when you're going through these conversations in meeting with clients, typically what time of the year are you having this? Is it towards the beginning of the year, the end of the year, middle? What does that look like from a timing perspective?
Well, usually we like to have these conversations at the end of the year. It kind of coincides with a lot of manufacturers and vendors having end of year sales. They want to get rid of some, I wouldn't say aging hardware, but hardware that isn't new. They need to make room for new stock. So you'll find a lot of deals on physical hardware. Obviously, people have to meet quotas, so you'll typically get some better deals at the back end of the year rather than the front.
Got it. So ballpark, let's talk about our average, average small mid-sized business out there. Let's say that their revenue is anywhere between 35 million a year and like 60, 70 million dollars a year. What have you seen that they typically spend from an IT perspective? And when I say IT support, IT managed services, maybe a little bit of application web development, as well as a full cybersecurity stack. What are these guys typically spending, and what should they be spending?
So, multifaceted answer here, but industry standard, people are saying that spending should be about 6% of revenue, a company's revenue. And what we're really actually seeing is a lot less than that. And to further dive into that answer, um, understanding what actually goes into IT costs. So we're not just talking about licenses. It's hardware. It's subscriptions for certain equipment. On top of that, there's conversations that we have with our clients about some of the vendors that we're choosing. We sometimes opt for hardware that you can have either perpetual licensing or vendors that aren't using a subscription-based model to keep that equipment fresh within organizations. You're not looking at like super expensive ongoing costs. That also allows us to kind of switch out hardware as needed as new products come out. But the second part of my answer is we're really looking at about 2 to 3% is that sweet spot for an organization. 2 to 3% of revenue to be spent on IT. And you mentioned development costs, support. I mentioned hardware and licensing, computers, accessories, stuff like that.
Got it. So all subscriptions, licensing stuff. So I did get a 93% in some of my math classes in high school and college. So 3% of say 50 million, you're looking at like $1.5 million a year. Is that what you're typically seeing in organizations, or do you work to get them to that level so that they are provided the appropriate services and hardware and solutions
We don't
necessary?
we don't typically see people organizations spending this money. I think a lot of organizations are spending a lot of money on hiring personnel or marketing efforts, but
Hmm.
what we've come to find out is there's some inefficiencies with the IT side. A good example is if you're a lawyer that's billing out at $500 an hour, and it takes your computer to boot up 30 minutes. You could buy a refurbished computer with an SSD that'll boot up in 45 seconds for $400. So
Yeah,
we're having that type of conversation with the law offices that we support, saying if you spend even as little as $400, you're gonna get your return on investment nearly instantly when you're not taking 30 minutes to reboot.
yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, from a hardware life cycle perspective, what is, and I know we're veering a little bit off, but I think that's important because it does, you have to take into the hardware life cycle when it comes to budgeting, right? I've always believed that you should be replacing hardware every 3 years. So, every year over 3 years, 1/3 of all the hardware should be replaced from a laptop, desktop perspective. Is that still typically the case, or are people taking that stuff out longer?
They're taking it out longer for sure. The technology and the hardware is getting better, so the age of that equipment can definitely be expanded.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, the technology changes quickly. So if you have an issue, like let's fix it.
Yeah,
A lot of people they're of the mentality where I don't like it's not broken, so let's not fix it. But they
yeah,
they kind of they get lulled into this false sense of like this is how my computer should be operating or my equipment should be operating. There's nothing else out there that'll improve, so why should I get a new computer? And then you introduce a new computer, and I know we're stuck on this computer topic, but this can be associated with physical servers, switches, networks,
yeah.
internet service connections, phone services, alternative, Adobe versus Foxit, stuff like that.
Got it. So, budget wise, from a budget perspective, how long should you, best practice, keep a desktop computer?
Right now, we're typically seeing that age of a desktop computer is about 5 years.
Okay, and the
Um,
laptop is less than, I assume?
Up a little less than that, just because of the wear and tear. You're obviously moving it back and forth. You're unplugging cables from it, whether it's just a single docking station cable or an Ethernet,
Yeah.
accessories, USBs. Things tend to get broken just from the physical use of the device. They
Hmm.
also tend to get dropped. But
Yes.
usually the devices that you're purchasing have some pretty nice warranties on them.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, ballpark about 5 years for your average user for a desktop, maybe a little less for a laptop. And then when you're looking at server equipment, networking equipment, that can get extended out a little further. We're typically not interested in replacing equipment that is younger than 5 years old, unless there's a specific need, a technical need where maybe you have a firewall that doesn't support the throughput that you need for your
Yeah,
organization.
got it. This came up, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. I'm not going to name the client, but they had wireless access points that were about 15 years old. Wireless access points for those. I mean, you could get a quality wireless access point for what, 150, $200.
Right,
So, these are drops in the bucket. I assume, is it safe to say those should last 7 to 8 years and then you're replacing stuff like that?
right. Unless there's
Okay.
an actual need, we're not the type of company that'll push to replace equipment for the latest and greatest solution.
Yep.
I think on the flip side of that example, we had an organization that said we absolutely need to have the latest and greatest wireless solution. And we're like, why? Like, if you want to spend the money, sure. But none of the devices that you have on that network can actually take advantage of that technology.
Got it. Yeah. I think the client was referring to like wireless 7 or something like that. It's
Right,
like,
right.
if you're doing, great, forward thinking, love it, but maybe not spend the money on that stuff now. So if you look at someone's IT budget and what is a breakdown? And maybe you don't have this. I'm throwing you on the spot here, but like, what is the percentage that should be put towards ballpark like services versus like cybersecurity and ongoing support and stuff like that? What have you typically seen? And when you're thinking about that, our average size client is about 50, 60 users. So like, what does that look like for that organization? What should be the breakdown from that IT budget across different buckets?
Um, so I can't answer specifically what the breakdown should be, but what we're
Mhm.
seeing right now is a lot of the spending is making sure that the individual that's hired to do a job has all the tools necessary. Unfortunately, the world has gone to like a subscription-based plan for everything. So you're
Yep.
paying $30 here, $10 there, $2 there. So that's kind of where it's difficult to associate like um, spending in terms of buckets for the different pieces.
Yep.
The shift that we're seeing is cool. I think the prices have kind of stabilized from those subscription pieces. What people are looking more for is to make sure that the people that they hired can continue doing the job that they were hired for. And that kind of pivots into the security piece. You want to make sure that if for whatever reason an account is compromised and data is encrypted, you can pull a backup of that relatively quickly. And there's a cost associated with that. You're paying a few bucks a month to protect a single user.
Yeah.
Um, that grows a little exponentially when you're trying to protect a network or a server, but it's still the same idea. You're spending money to make sure that the services that you're using, the people that you're employing can continue doing their job.
Got it. And then from a prioritization perspective, obviously, even us as an organization, we have a limit what we can spend, right? You're not supposed to spend more than you make. But from an organization that the organization businesses that we're managing, where do you try to push the CFOs, the presidents, to put priority over what they should and should not be spending if there is a limit in place? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's like I guess it's like a low-hanging fruit of going back to making sure that the employees that are hired can continue doing their job in the
Hmm.
event of some sort of disaster or an event. Um, you can spend just a few dollars to protect the organization. Spam filtering, for the most part, these are security solutions, not so
Hmm.
much productivity like your Microsoft licenses, your Google Workspace licenses, but the security pieces. So, making sure that your organization is protected by a spam filter, making sure you have a basic antivirus, taking it a step up, having an endpoint detection and response agent. And you can get different flavors based on what is appropriate for your business and appropriate for your budget. We can give you the Honda, we can give you the Mercedes, we can give you the Ferrari. We'll work with you to figure out what your need is, what the risk tolerance you have, and what
Yeah.
kind of budget.
Yeah. And one thing that we're having conversations with our partners is bundling some of these things together and driving those costs down for those subscriptions. You want to talk about how bundling works just from a high level? I know when we're still in conversations with our partners on how to get these bundles, but there is some, efficiencies that we in some drivers that we can put in place for groups that will take a full security stack versus hodgepodge and taking pieces together.
Yeah, so that last piece there is really what's driving this kind of change in the industry. There's hundreds of different solutions that will fill gaps or holes in security or even service and support. Um, the important piece to talk about here is obviously driving the cost lower. So, the barrier for entry for organizations is easier. Um, there's products out there that are obviously security focused. Security operations centers are charging $120 a user a month to monitor users at the organization.
Yep.
It's crazy. I'm not sure how. you know Kudos to the sales guys over there, but
Don't name
uh,
names, but yes.
how do you sell that? But more importantly, um, clients won't pay for that.
Yeah.
um, there's other solutions just as good for a fraction of the cost for similar services, and to entice them, they're going to tack on additional security features. So, when I first started with CTS, I think the standard for IT service providers was, I'll get you what you need when you need it. Nowadays, it's more so like, you've always needed this. Let's include it in this stack for you for the same price that you're going to be paying
Yeah.
regardless, because at the end of the day, you will benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that comes out to mind is a lot of our clients and potential clients that we meet with, security awareness training. It is an extremely, extremely effective solution to protect your organization, and it's dirt cheap. Like, for a couple bucks, like literally, and I'm not just saying, like $2 or $3 a month, you're providing ongoing training and testing of an organ of employees and contracts of an organization, and that's the biggest hit that you're going to have when it comes to a breach. So it's a super effective, and especially when you take those bundles, you get a couple of these things honestly for free, which is kind of cool.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so one thing I wanted to share with people is, you had mentioned that IT costs sometimes get out of control, especially as you're layering on all these different services and different subscriptions. The first that almost everyone says is, do I really need Microsoft Premium license? Like, it is not cheap. And I get it. Like, I don't enjoy paying for that for my employees, but it's part of the deal, right? And there's some security and efficiency and productivity solutions that are part of that package. One of the things that I will give kudos to Simon on is he will work with our clients and say, hey, granted, employees are going to come and go. You're going to have maybe a 5 or even a 10%, whatever that changes from an employee count perspective on a yearly basis. But if you sit down with the client and say, what are your core quantity of employees? So if say it's a 50-person employee operation, there's 50 users, you can say, I'm never going to drop below 45 or maybe 42. The cool thing that you could do is, if you know Microsoft license, if you know Adobe licenses, and I can go on and on with all the different vendors, you can start converting some of those monthly licenses to full year premium. And it's not a bad deal. You get, I think, is it a free month essentially?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and obviously it's different between the vendors, but like,
absolutely.
if you're going monthly, you are paying a premium for that.
Yeah.
They rather lock in that annual deal, and there's cost savings associated. Some other vendors, sometimes with hardware, server licensing, stuff like that, you can go out as far as 3, even 5 years for
Yep.
some cost savings.
Yeah. So, work with whoever your IT provider is. We'd love to help you and stuff like that. But if you can get 85% of your base users on annual subscriptions, you can and we will save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year in subscription costs. So there's some really cool things. As far as if those who are doing some kind of hybrid, or you have a cloud-based solution when you're with Microsoft Azure, if you're with AWS with Amazon, there are some cool things that you could do from a licensing perspective of those dedicated resources and servers that will drive those down. You could do a 1 year or a 2 year guaranteed rate. There's tons of stuff to do. So these are all things that you should be working with your managed service provider, someone like Simon here, that can really push down those costs the best you can. Another thing from a cost perspective is, and we are completely solution agnostic, both on software, hardware. Obviously, we have our preferences, but we sometimes come across clients that we pick up, and they have firewalls and network switches and stuff like that have subscription-based models around that. And in many cases, I'd love for you to share some of the stories without naming names, of course. We are replacing brand new hardware that will pay for itself in like less than a year because they don't have those ongoing subscription and costs. Can you talk about that a little bit and what that looks like?
Yeah, like I said earlier, kudos to the salespeople. You obviously want to have the newest, shiniest toy. Everyone wants to scream they have, Cisco in their network closet or the Ferrari in the garage, but that costs money. Um, and to buy, for instance, we're not bashing Cisco, great product. Obviously, they're doing great stuff in the world. You're paying, a few $100s or few $1,000s for network equipment, and on top of that, you have annual licensing fees, and that's anywhere between, what we're seeing, the small, medium, mid-sized business industry, anywhere between $100 to few thousand to renew a license on an annual basis. And
Yeah,
there's vendors out there where you can buy hardware for, on an annual, well, not an annual basis, but it's a one-time fixed cost of a few $100s, on the higher end, $1,000 for a high-end switch. And you have the support included with that. You have
hmm,
the team that supports the devices. And if something goes wrong, you can buy another device 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, and you're going to get new updated equipment.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could go talk for hours about open source and various options, but it's interesting that it boils down to the marketing and sales around some of these products. And I'm not saying, again, you could go to FortiGate, you could talk about Cisco and some of these solutions, but sometimes you don't need that in an organization. I mean, the majority, in fact, I think all of the organizations, I would not consider an enterprise level kind of quality of hardware software that they need. So there's nothing wrong with hardware that is, not paid. So there's tons of different ways. So we could talk for hours about how you could take a look at the computing ecosystem of an organization and see where you could lower some costs without, losing features and functionality. So anything else you
Absolutely.
want to share that are key things that people should be thinking about when building out their IT budget or what they should be doing on that IT roadmap?
Yeah,
Pitfalls, lessons learned.
Yeah, one thing that I think some people fail to realize is there's a lot of tools that are doing the same thing. A few conversations that have come up over the years have been like, we're using Dropbox, but they're a Microsoft shop. It's like, well, there's a few $1,000s of savings there because you have OneDrive, you have SharePoint with your Microsoft subscription.
Mhm.
Another good example
Zoom.
is right. Um, you have Teams available to you. You can use that. And obviously there's certain different functionalities that one
Mhm.
offers that another might not. I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of this conversation, Adobe versus Foxit. There's cost savings there. Um, and then I think we actually had a call recently with a client, and they were asking about AI transcription
Mhm.
software services, and you can add new solutions to your organization, but you can also use what's available to you.
Yeah.
Copilot's another good example. Copilot versus Otter AI, Firefly. There's 100 million different flavors of that, but I think clients are like, they see the shiny toy and they're like, I want it, and then they get it and they're like, wait, this does the same thing that this does, but we're paying for two. So
Yes.
there's cost savings there when you can understand the tools that you have, the tools that are available to you, and then identifying the gaps that you need to fill. We can help out with that.
Yeah. So I always encourage clients, have the conversation with your trusted partner vendor. I mean, that's what we're here for our clients. Have those conversations. Like, we have a need, and you shouldn't be necessarily going saying, I want this. Like, let's take a look at the options. Maybe you may have a solution in-house with some of these subscriptions that will fit that need. So good point.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Simon, for all your words of wisdom. Hopefully, everyone got some good knowledge nuggets out of this, and they will be able to either make some cost savings in their technology spend, or maybe decide I need to slightly carve out more money for technology to better my organization. So productivity, security, whatever it may be. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. So thank you, Simon.
Yep. Thanks again. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, and share out if you did. And we look forward to additional videos with you guys all. Enjoy. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.